Ladies and gentlemen, it's start time. Jury's Hotel proudly presents Ireland's international comedian, Hal Roach.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Dublin, welcome to Ireland, and welcome to Jury's Irish Cabaret. Tonight, there's somebody smoking turf. Yeah. There's a little bit of Irish in everybody, and of course we Irish always enjoy a little joke on ourselves. That's why we live forever. When Irish eyes are smiling, they'd steal your heart away. And tonight I'm going to try and regale you with the simplicity and unpretentiousness of the humour here in the Emerald Isle. This fella Casey went to the doctor down in County Cork. He said, "Can you give me something for me wind?" And the doctor gave him a kite. Write it down, it's a good one, write it down. Two fellas in a pub in Belfast talking, and one said to the other, he said, "What's new?" And the other fella said, "There's good news and there's bad news." He said, "What's the bad news?" He said, "The bad news is that the English have landed on the moon." He said, "What's the good news?" He said, "All of them." Oh, dear God. Thank you. I come from Waterford City, where the lovely Crystal is made. There was 23 children in our family, and we always put my mother on a pedestal. We had to keep my father away from her. This fella Murphy joined the local dramatic society down in County Cork, and he got a part in a play. He had two words to say: "It is." That's all he had to say, and he was delighted. And for 2 weeks he was going around rehearsing, talking to himself. "It is, it is, it is. It is, it is." On the night of the play, he walked onto the stage and he said, "Is it?" This fella Casey was the Irish Evel Knievel, but he was different. Anything everybody else did in the stunts, he wanted to do it in reverse. Even as a child, he was different. When he was 10 years old, he ran away from a circus to join an orphanage. But anyway, different. His last attempt at a stunt was only brilliant. Can you imagine? There was 36 parked motorcycles, and he decided he was going to go over them in a bus. And he would have made it, but halfway over, somebody rang the bell. Write it down, it's a good one, it's a good one. Murphy went to the doctor the other day. He said to the doctor, "What's good for insomnia?" And the doctor said, "A good night's sleep." But anyway, the doctor examined him, and he said to Casey, "I can't seem to find anything wrong with you." He said, "I'll have to put it down to drink." And Casey said, "That's all right." He said, "Doctor, I'll come back another day when you're sober." It's a good one. Anyway, the doctor told him to walk 10 miles a day. And a week goes by, and he phoned the doctor. He said, "I'm 200 miles from home. What do I do now?" Simple, God knows. Casey found himself one night in London, by the way, very late, 12:30 at night, and he was down in the underground, the subway station, very late at night. So he walked along to the escalator, and there's a big sign, a big notice on the escalator, and it says, "Dogs must be carried on the escalator." And he said, "My God, where am I going to find a dog at this hour of the night?" I love children's stories as well. I love kids. Oh, yes. This little Catholic boy said to this little Jewish boy, "Our parish priest knows much more than your rabbi." And the Jewish kid said, "Of course he does, because you tell him everything." I like that. His Holiness Pope John Paul, when he came to Ireland, with his great message of peace for all of us, by the way, not only for Ireland, but indeed all the world. But of all the great attributes that this man possesses, strength is one of them. Strength in his face, but also his great sense of humour. I don't think we'll ever forget his great sense of humour here in Ireland. I understand that when he went to Maynooth, to the college, all the religious were lining up to be introduced to him, and there was a little discussion, about feasibility or even imagination as to what nationality our Lord could also have been, just as a bit of fun. Some of the cardinals and the priest said he could have been French, he could have been Italian, he could have been, he could have been Polish, he could have been anything. So they decided that they'd ask the Pope himself. I mean, after all, he is infallible. So when His Holiness came in, they said, Your Holiness, we're just as a bit of fun discussing the possibility of what nationality our Lord really might have been. And the Pope said, he was Irish. And they said, how do you make out he was Irish? And the Pope said, well, who else would be 33, single, and living with his mother? Lovely. In America, you call it the welfare. In Ireland, it's the labour exchange. Same thing. Visualise the scene. The clerk is sitting behind the desk interviewing Murphy, who was applying for some assistance. Now, the clerk said, Mr. Murphy, tell me something about your assets. What visible means of support do you have at the moment? Are you enjoying? And Murphy said, I have 500,000 shares in the Texaco Oil Company doing well. I have 300,000 shares in Guinness's brewery booming, and lots of stocks and bonds and all that sort of thing. And the clerk said, good. Do you have a house? And Murphy said, I have 4 houses, fully furnished and paid for on the outskirts of Dublin. And the clerk said, good. Have you got a car? And Murphy said, I have a new Mercedes-Benz outside the door. And the clerk said, you're joking. And Murphy said, well, you started it. Donegal. Do you know, people live to great ages in Donegal. Some of them 105 years old, 110 years old. My God, we'll have to shoot them all, we will. They live to this great age because of the fresh air up there. The lovely fresh air in Donegal. It's so invigorating that the caretaker of the local graveyard has to go around every morning with a big stick. Come on, lie down there, boys. Come on now, lie down, lie down. We Irish, though, we have a great sense of humour, but we're as cute as the devil, you know that. We always were cute. We could buy and sell you, honest to God. Well, I tell you, Henry Ford's parents were born in Ireland. Did you know that, down in Cork? And many years ago, Henry Ford came to visit the birthplace of his parents in County Cork, and when the lads in the town heard he was in town, they weren't missing a chance like that. So they all converged on the hotel, and they said, Mr. Henry Ford, we welcome you to the birthplace of your parents here in Cork. He said, you are the world's greatest inventor, the world's greatest industrialist, the world's greatest philanthropist, and we welcome you here to Ireland. He said, by the way, we're starting to build a new hospital here in the city, and we thought in honour of your parents, you'd like to make a donation to the hospital. So Henry Ford said, of course, and he sat down and he wrote out a cheque for £5,000. The next day, in the Cork papers, the newspapers read headlines, Henry Ford donates £50,000 to the new hospital. Of course, the lads converged on him that evening again and said, we apologise about the mistake in the newspaper, but tomorrow morning we'll have it rectified back to the 5,000. Oh, we're as cute as the devil. So Henry Ford said, wait a minute. He said, how much is this hospital costing? And they said £50,000. So he said, give me back the cheque. So he took back the cheque, tore it up. He wrote a new cheque for £50,000, and he said, I'll give you this cheque under one condition, that the inscription over the hospital will be the one I have in mind. They said they didn't care what inscription it was. And if you go to Cork, ladies and gentlemen, you can still see it today, and it reads, I came among you and you took me in. Write it down. Ah, you're lovely people, you're lovely people. Casey went to the dentist last week. He said, I'm very worried. All my teeth are turning yellow. What can I do? And the dentist said, wear a brown tie. Tie. I like it. Murphy went to the bank to have a cheque cashed. And the teller said, can you identify yourself? And Murphy took a mirror from his pocket, looked at it and said, yes, it's definitely me. But we Irish, as I say, like a little laugh at ourselves. A lot of nonsense talk today about ethnic humour. There's nothing wrong with ethnic humour if you can enjoy a little joke on yourselves, in good taste, of course. We Irish will live forever because of our sense of humour. I went to Niagara Falls, by the way, very spectacular, when I was playing in Buffalo, New York. This Irish plumber, looking at Niagara Falls, he said, I think I can fix this. But one of the funniest little jokes I've heard in Ireland in a little village for a long time is Murphy and the husband, they bought a little house, you see, and it was near the railway station, but it was very noisy, particularly when the trains were going by. The house used to shake a lot. So one day the landlord visited the house, and Mrs. Murphy was trying to explain to him they were going through a bad time with this train business, you see. Now, she said, sometimes when I'm in bed and the train goes by, it nearly knocks me out of the bed. So the landlord said, no, you've got to be exaggerating here. I know now it's not good, but it can't be that bad. Well, she said, I'm telling you now, there's a train due any minute, she says, and I'm going to lie on the bed and you'll see for yourself. As a matter of fact, she said, now, why don't you just lie down here beside me and then you'll experience what I'm trying to tell you. So the landlord lay down beside her, and didn't Murphy walk in the door? He said, what's going on here? And the landlord said, you won't believe this, but we're waiting for a train. Oh, for God's sake, write it down. It's a good one. It's not a sin to laugh at that, honestly. It's only a sin if you take pleasure in it. There was three fellas, an Englishman, a Scotsman, and an Irish fella, and they're trying to get into the Olympic Games without a ticket. The Englishman's name is Bentley, the Scottish fella's name is McGregor, and your man from Ireland is Murphy, as usual. So the Englishman conceives a brilliant idea to get in without a ticket. There's a big wooden pole lying on the ground beside him, and he picked it up under his arm, and he blatantly walked up to the gate and he said, Bentley, England, pole vaulting. And they let him in. The Scotsman picked up a manhole cover from the street under his arm, walked up and said, McGregor, Scotland, discus. And they let him in. There's a roll of barbed wire lying on the ground. And Murphy picked it up under his arm and he walked up and he said, Murphy, Ireland, fencing. I love you all. You're lovely. Simple little Irish stories, aren't they gorgeous? They really are. Murphy opened a pub on the moon, but it wasn't very successful. There was no atmosphere. No atmosphere. This fella O'Brien, by the way, was very nervous, and he always slept with a gun under his pillow. And one night he heard a noise at the foot of the bed, and he fired, and he blew his big toe off. He said, thank God I wasn't sleeping at that end of the bed or I'd blown my brains out. Simple, it's simple. It really is. Of course, bingo is becoming very popular in Ireland now, the bingo games, you see, but we have it licked here, you see. We call out the numbers in Latin so that the Protestants can't win. We got it all together here, we really do. I was playing bingo one night with Casey, and as the game went on, he kept looking over my shoulder, and when the fella called out 3 and 3, 33, he said, you have that. And as it went on, he said, 4 and 5, 50, for 45, you have that. I said, why don't you mark your own card? He said, I can't, it's full. An American lady met Murphy in a pub there one night. She says, is it true if you kiss the Blarney Stone, you're gifted, you get, endowed with the gift of eloquence? Well, he said, I believe if you kiss somebody that has kissed the Blarney Stone, that's better. So she put her arms around him and gave him a huge, big hug and a kiss. He said, I haven't, personally kissed the Blarney Stone. He said, but I've sat on it. It's not a sin to laugh at that, honest to God. It's only a sin if you take pleasure in it. Now listen, listen. Casey went to the doctor complaining with pains in his chest, and the doctor said to him, you'll have to sleep out in the open, so he joined the police force. The first day he was on duty and a big truck came along and he walked into the middle of the road. He said, stop and don't move as well. And it was Murphy. So he said to Murphy, have you got a driving license? And Murphy said, I have. He said, good. He says, because if you didn't have one, I'd want to see it. Anyway, you have to think about that. You'll have to think about that. So he brought him into court, And the judge said, what's the charge? And he said, driving at 30 miles an hour over the speed limit in a built-up area. And the judge said, Murphy, what have you got to say for yourself? And Murphy said, I couldn't have been doing 30 miles an hour. He said, as a matter of fact, he said, I couldn't be doing any more than 20 miles an hour. And now he said that I come to think of it, I was hardly doing 20 because the visibility was bad. He said, I'm sure, he said, I couldn't have been doing any more than 10 miles an hour. And the judge said, stop the case before this man backs into somebody and kills them. Oh, dear. This is a special little piece that gives me great joy and happiness to do. It's about a little girl. My own little girl, her name is Grania, and every time I do this little piece, I think about her. I'm sure that everybody here tonight that has a little girl will see her in these words, because children are the same all over the world, and it's simply called, What is a Little Girl? Little girls are the nicest things that happen to people. They're born with a little bit of angel shine about them. And even though sometimes it wears a little bit thin, there's always enough left to lasso and capture your heart. Even when she's sitting in the mud or crying temperamental tears or parading up and down the street in mother's best clothes, a little girl can be sweeter, badder, oftener than anyone else in the world. She can run around, stamp, make funny noises that frazzle your nerves. And yet when you open your mouth, she stands there demure with that special look in her eyes. A little girl is innocence playing in the mud, beauty standing on its head, and motherhood dragging a doll by the foot. Girls are available in 5 colors: black, white, red, yellow, and brown. But somehow Mother Nature always seems to know your favorite color whenever you place your order. They disprove the law of supply and demand, for there are millions of little girls, and yet each one is as precious as rubies. God borrowed from many strange creatures to create a little girl. He took the song of a bird, the squeal of a pig, the stubbornness of a mule, the antics of a monkey, the spryness of a grasshopper, the curiosity of a cat, the slyness of a fox, and the softness of a kitten. And then he added the mysterious mind of a woman. Little girls like new shoes, party dresses, noise-making, the girl next door, ice cream, coloring books, dancing lessons, kitchens, cans of water, and one boy. She dislikes visitors, boys in general, large dogs, hand-me-downs, vegetables, or staying in the front garden. She's the noisiest when you're thinking, the prettiest when she has provoked you, and the quietest when you want to show her off. She's the busiest at bedtime, the most flirtatious when she has annoyed you and must not get the better of you again. Who else could cause you more grief, joy, irritation, satisfaction, embarrassment, and genuine delight than this combination of Eve, Salome, and Florence Nightingale? She can mess up your home, your hair, and your dignity, spend your time, your money, and your temper. And just when your patience is ready to crack, her sunshine peeps through and you've lost again. She is a nerve-wracking nuisance, just a noisy bundle of mischief. But when your dreams tumble down and the world is a mess and you seem pretty much of a fool, she can make you a king when she climbs on your knee, her arms around your neck and whispers, "Dad, I love you best of all." Write it down. You know, we Irish have a way with words that belongs to us alone. Do you know that? There's a little bit of Irish, as I say, in all of us. And as I talk to you now, you will recognize your grandparents and your parents and all your aunts and uncles by the way I talk to you now. Do you ever notice when the mother-in-law comes to visit the house, she never addresses the husband personally, always through the wife? She'll say things like, "Would he like a cup of tea?" Or is he going out? They never talk to you. You're sitting there like a half-boiled Egypt, honest to God. We do. Also, we say things that aren't necessary. The unnecessary remarks of the Irish, and this is what my album is all about. In the doctor's waiting room the other day, this fella got talking to me, Murphy, and he said to me, I hope to God, he said, the doctor finds something wrong with me because I'd hate to feel this way if I'm well. There was two widows, by the way, two old widows up in Donegal at Casey's funeral, and one said he went quick. The other one said he did. He went quick, 'twas sudden. And the other one said, where is he going to be buried? And the first one said, in St. Mary's Cemetery. And the other one said, well, that's where I want to be buried too, if the good Lord spares me. Simple, God knows it's simple, yes. How many times since you arrived in Ireland have you been sitting in the lobby of a hotel or a restaurant? There's an empty chair like that beside you. You won't be sitting down there 2 minutes when somebody will walk up to you and say, is there anybody sitting there? And you're worse than they are because you look and you say, I don't think there's anybody sitting there. Now you talk like that, don't you? Did you ever stop your car in the country in Ireland and ask directions to some place? Did you ever do that? It's a study in itself. Now, let me explain. We Irish are very warm, friendly people, and if somebody stops the car to ask us directions to some village, it makes us feel important. But if we don't know the directions to the place you're looking for, we haven't the heart to tell you. Then if you keep talking to us, we panic and we tell you anything to get rid of you. It happened myself down in County Cork. I was looking for a place called Clonakilty. I said to the farmer, I said, am I on the right road for Clonakilty? He said, you are, but you're going the wrong way. So I said, well, what will I do? Well, he said, if I were you, I wouldn't start from here at all. Suddenly there was a bus passing by and he put up his hand and he stopped the bus. He obviously knew the driver and he went over, started talking to him for 15 minutes, left me standing in the middle of the road. He came back to me and he said, I've just been talking to him, he said, and he doesn't know the way either. But he knows a man who does. We talk that way, honest to God. I met a fella from Galway. I said, is it true if you ask a man from Galway a question, he always answers you with another question? He said, who told you that? Write it down. These lovely little simple unnecessary remarks, and we say them every day in Ireland. I heard my mother, God be good to her, one day saying to my father, what colour do you want the backyard whitewashed? There's a good one. What about that? And another time she said to me, she said, I've lost my reading glasses and I won't be able to look for them till I find them. Isn't it lovely? An American stopped a farmer in Ireland in a big Cadillac and he said, how far is it to Galway? And the farmer said, 6 miles. He said, with a car like that you could do it in 3. It's simple, God knows it's simple. We laugh at ourselves, and why not? Casey went to Spain, by the way, for a holiday and he got a fantastic suntan, and the day he got back to Dublin he dropped dead. He did. And the wife laid him out in his best suit for the wake. And Mrs. Murphy came in next door and had a look at him. She said, my God, he looks fantastic. He had a great tan. And the widow said, yes. She said, the holiday did them the world of good. And she said, Mrs. Murphy said, he looks so happy and serene. And the widow said, well, of course, she said he's happy because he died in his sleep, you see, and he doesn't know he's dead at all yet, you see. But she said, when he wakes up and finds out that he's dead, she said, the shock will kill him. Write it down. These two fellas, Casey and Flanagan, found themselves in London and they were down and out, the two of them. They were broke. They were passing a restaurant one day. There's a big sign that says, we serve any meal. If you can order a meal we can't serve, you get £100. So Casey said to Flanagan, we'll go in and try it. But Flanagan said, supposing they have what we're looking for, what will we do? And Casey said, we can always wash dishes. Come on, let's go. So they went in, they sat down. This waiter, immaculate, walked up and said, gentlemen, what will you have? And Casey said, we'd like elephant's kidneys on toast. The waiter never flinched. He said, certainly, sir. He went away. 5 minutes later, he came back and he put £100 on the table. He said, "You're very lucky. We just ran out of bread." You're lovely people. You're lovely. This fella Flanagan, by the way, had a lot of money when he was looking for a wife, but he heard that the Spanish women were the most beautiful in the world, so he decided he was going to have a Spanish wife. And he went to a little village in Spain, in Granada, and he inquired as to where he might, be introduced to some pretty Spanish women. He was told they congregate up in the mountains and they have these little caves where they wait for their suitors to come up to court them. So he said, now when you go up to the little cave, he said, stand outside and give the love sound, the love signal, which is woo, woo. And then you hear back, woo, woo. And in you go and introduce yourself, and that's it. So he went up into the mountain. He picked out the biggest cave he could find, and he went, woo, woo. And the answer came back, woo, woo. And he went in, and he was knocked down by a train. There was a knock at the door, and Murphy's wife opened the door. There was a man standing there. He said, I'm collecting for the home for alcoholics. He said, could you give me something? She said, if you come back at 5 o'clock, my husband will be here. You can have him. Write it down. It's a good one. This fella, Flanagan, is a taxi driver in New York City, and some time ago outside Kennedy Airport, this very English colonel got into the cab and said, take me to Christ Church in New York. So Flanagan said, hop in, and he took him to St. Patrick's Cathedral. And when they got there, the old colonel said, this is not Christ Church, and Flanagan said, if he's in town, he's in there. It's nice. Yeah. Murphy went to Casey's pet shop. He said, I want to buy a canary, but it has to be a wonderful singer. And Casey said, I have just the thing. Just arrived. Fabulous. So he produced this canary, and he began to sing beautifully. And, of course, Flanagan was impressed. He said, that's the one. I'll take that. But just then he noticed the canary had only one leg. So he said to Casey, this canary has only one leg. And Casey said, you want a singer or you want a dancer? What do you want? What do you want? What about this now for a nice little I love Scots stories. Scottish humour is very like our own. Scots stories. There was 3 Scotsmen at Mass on a Sunday, you see, and the priest during the ceremony, what am I talking about? I'll start that. See, I'm recording this, so I'll have to start again. I love Scottish stories. They're very like our own. Now, in church on a Sunday morning, there was 3. Yeah, I have to do it again, you see. I'm recording it, you see what I mean? So you have to laugh as if you haven't heard it before. Do you understand? I love Scottish stories. They're very like our own. Already applause, and I haven't even told the gag yet. And the 3 of them were in church, you see, and during the sermon, the priest said, now today, he said, I want every one of you to put £5 in the collection plate, because the 3 Scottish fellas panicked. And then they got an idea. One of them fainted, and the other 2 carried him out. Oh dear God, it's a good one. Write it down. Write it down. I just got a little note, by the way, to welcome a Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, who are here tonight celebrating their first wedding anniversary here with the 2 children, and we'd like to twins, of course. You don't think of that, do you? But we Irish laugh at politics, we laugh at religion, we laugh at anything. This fella Murphy pulled up in a garage here, by the way, in Dublin one day, and he said to the attendant, fill her up. And the attendant said, we don't sell petrol at all. Well, he said, a couple of pints of oil. And the attendant said, we don't sell oil either. So the fella said, what do you do? And the attendant said, we're fronting for the IRA. Well, he said, blow up the tyres. That's a good one. Write it down. But you have to laugh, for God's sake. Do you know a story I love, by the way? Now, this happened in Jury's Hotel here. This fellow Flanagan was coming down in the elevator one night with his wife. And there's a beautiful blonde lady in the elevator with him, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. Flanagan kept staring at her. Of course, I think his wife noticed this as well. So when they got down and the elevator doors opened, the blonde just went up and smacked him across the face. She said, I don't like men who pinch my bottom. And she walked off. And Flanagan said to his wife, he said, I swear to God, he said, I never pinched her bottom. And his wife said, I know you didn't, I did. Casey, by the way, went to a parents' meeting of teachers in the local school where his young man attended his son. And he said to the teacher, I've just come along to, find out how the little fella is getting on. And the teacher said, your son is in a class of his own. And your man said, I didn't know he was doing that well. And the teacher said, he's not, but he smells. This fella Casey was working on the roadways, you see. The new thing in Ireland now is the parking meters. They're putting them up all over the place. So, of course, Casey, the foreman, and his gang mates were given the job of erecting 150 parking meters around Dublin. So they got them up on the truck and away they went. They were missing for 2 weeks. And when they came back, they were all dishevelled, all clothes and rags, and they had beards, and they looked terrible. And the parking meters were still on the truck. So the boss says, where the hell have you been and why didn't you do the job? And Casey said, we couldn't find a place to park. Oh, dear God. With a Scotsman here last night at the show. He was here at the show down there, sitting at that table, and I said, what are you doing here in Dublin? And he said, I'm here on my honeymoon, but he was alone. I said, where's your wife? He said, she's back in Scotland. She's been to Dublin before. Oh, dear God. You have to laugh. Laughing's good for you. Casey went to Spain for a holiday. He went into a little restaurant and the waiter came up and he ordered steak and mushrooms, but the waiter couldn't speak English and, of course, Casey couldn't speak Spanish. So he took out a piece of paper and he drew a photograph of a bull and a mushroom and gave it to the waiter. So 10 minutes later, the waiter came back with an umbrella and a ticket for the bullfight. Flanagan was very fond of a drink, and Father Murphy has been trying to get him off the booze for years without success. And one day the priest met Flanagan in the street. He said, Flanagan, he said, you have no idea, he said, how proud I was last night as I stood in the church, in the pulpit, and to see you come through that door after an absence of 3 years and go into that confessional and stay there for 4 hours. And Flanagan said, my God, so that's where I was. It's lovely. Write it down. Flanagan had a mule, by the way. It was a bit wild. And one day it attacked his mother-in-law and she died. Hundreds and hundreds turned up for the funeral. And after the service, the priest said, I didn't realise, he said, that your mother-in-law was so popular. Hundreds of men coming to pay tribute to her. And he said, they're not here, he said, to do that. They're here to buy the mule. You know, Murphy had a beautiful garden. And everybody used to admire it, particularly the parish priest. Every time he passed the garden, he'd look at it and say, my God, Murphy, he said, the Lord and yourself are partners. And every morning he'd pass by and say that, and Murphy got a bit fed up. So the next time the priest came by and said, this is a beautiful garden, the Lord and yourself are partners, Murphy said, that may be, Father, he said, but you should have seen this garden when the Lord had it on his own. Casey was applying for a job in the civil service here in Dublin, by the way. In the interview, certain fundamental questions they ask you to get an idea of your IQ. So anyway, Casey sat down and the clerk said to him, now he said, a little test. He said, now what is made of leather and has 5 fingers? And Casey said, I don't know. So the clerk said, it's a glove. Oh, is it a glove? Oh, yeah. So the clerk said, what has 10 fingers and is made of leather? And Casey said, I don't know. And the clerk said, 2 gloves. He said, oh, 2 gloves. Now he said, finally, the last question is this. He said, in what year was Eamon de Valera elected to the presidency of Ireland? And Casey said, would it be 3 gloves? Simple, God knows it's simple. This fella Murphy had 2 wooden legs and he had a fire in his house. They saved the house, but he was burned to the ground. He tried to claim from the insurance company. They told him he had a leg to stand. Somebody just sent me up a lovely little joke. You know, we laugh at politics in Ireland, we laugh at religion, we laugh at all sorts. We love to, of course we laugh at religion, we enjoy it. A little story about 4 clergymen who were having a reconciliation session and each was confessing his sins. The first one said that he had an addiction to the little drop of the crater, a little drink. He admitted that. And the second one said that he had an urge to steal now and then. And the third clergyman said that he was suffering from envy and so on. And they asked the fourth clergyman what his sin was, and he said, "My sin is gossip, and I can't wait to get out of here." I want to read to you, I want to tell you about some Irish toasts. There are some lovely words connected with Irish toasts, a lot of beauty connected with how we toast our visitors here and our own people as well. I'll just tell you a couple of them. Listen to this for a nice little toast. St. Patrick was a gentleman of strategy and strength. He drove the snakes from Ireland. Here's a toast unto his health. But not too many toasts now, lest we forgetting then, forget the good St. Patrick and see the snakes again. Oh, that gives me a thirst. That gives me a thirst thinking about it. What about this one? May you have children, and may they grow as mature in taste and health and colour, and as sought after as the contents of this glass. May you have warm words on a cold evening, a full moon on a dark night, and the road downhill all the way to your door. May every hair on your head turn into a candle to light your way to heaven, and may God and His Holy Mother take the harm of the years away from you. May you have no frost on your spuds, no worms on your cabbage. May your goat give plenty of milk, and if you inherit a donkey, may she be in foal. Did you like those? They're nice, they're nice, they're nice. Write it down, you may forget it, write it down. If that happens, you'll regret it, write it down. If you've had a real good time and a drop of vintage wine and the Irish jokes were fine, so write it down. Write it down, write it down, write it down. It's nice to see you smile, write it down. And when laughter fills the air, don't you make it all so rare. Life is better when you care, so write it down. If you're driving home tonight, write it down. Don't give anyone a fright, write it down. Don't go crazy in that car, and don't push the gas too far. Take a taxi if you jar, so write it down. Write it down, write it down, write it down. It's nice to see you smile, write it down. And when laughter fills the air, don't you make it all so rare. Life is better when you care, so write it down. Now it's time to say goodnight, write it down. Thank you for being so bright, I'll write it down. Though fate may push and shove you, by the Lord who reigns above you, this is how I really love you, write it down. Write it down, write it down, write it down. It's nice to see you smile, write it down. And when laughter fills the air, don't you make it all so rare. Life is better when you care, so write it down. Life is better when you care, so write it down.